Yoga, chocolate, and chit chat with Melanie
Hi, everybody.
and Janet. I'm the studio owner of Pro Yoga and Fitness and a yoga instructor. And Melanie is a yoga instructor, among many, many other things here. So we're very excited to bring you the third episode. And the topic for today, we'll get right into it, is not every pose is for everybody. And so this kind of came about because there's this phrase out there that people use, and it's yoga is for everybody, and it can be interpreted depending on whether you connect the everybody, right? So yoga is for everybody, meaning is for everyone, or yoga is and yoga is for everybody, right? Everybody. Since the yoga industry, I think they've gotten a lot better at it, but it used to be represented by dancer like shapes, which not everybody's is. So therefore, it came across as a little bit more intimidating. And while I definitely think there have been strides for inclusivity,
Yes.
including more representing more body types, the point is that, with today's topic, that not every pose is for everybody, right? So that's not to say that yoga isn't for everybody, but every pose.
Right.
Right.
Right. Because we had a client who actually said that a pose was hard for her because she had stuff in the way, right? So certain poses, depending on how you're built,
Mm-hmm.
either where you carry weight or even just longer limbs, can make poses more accessible to some people, and other people, they really struggle. And as an instructor, sometimes, like everyone here knows I have the longest arms ever. So binds and reaching behind and touching the floor, I can do that easier than someone if, as an instructor, I'm looking at them and I notice they're very tiny and their arms are very short. So they're not going to be able to reach the way that I can reach. So that I can do something with ease involving my arms. Another client is looking at me like, how are you doing that? Right?
Oh yeah, definitely. And back in the day when yoga was first making its way into America, I believe that certain styles of yoga tended to be more rigid with regards to everyone making the shape, right? That if you didn't make the shape, that there was something wrong with you. Whereas I believe now, depending on the style that you're in, but I would think most of them, and I don't frequent other places as much as I used to, but I am plugged in via social media. I do think that there is a recognition that not everybody is going to be able to fit themselves into every single pose. For example, like Melody saying, half binds. Yeah, I mean, having long arms will make it easier for you to connect to your hip with your hand, whereas somebody with shorter arms is gonna require a different type of mechanic and dynamic in their physique to make that happen. It's going to require additional effort. And so, as instructors, I know we're super, super mindful of that.
Yes. Yeah. And certain poses, for me, I carry my weight in my midsection, and I have a large chest. So for me, shoulder stand, shoulder stand is not a comfortable pose for me. Plow pose. Plow pose is not a comfortable pose because as you get into that pose, everything shifts up towards your neck and you feel like you can't breathe. So there are certain poses that are just not, they don't feel good. They
Right.
just don't feel good. It's not that you can't do them. So yes, you can do them and you work towards doing them, but once you're in them, it doesn't feel good. So if it doesn't feel good, you don't need to stay there, right? Come
That's
on out.
true.
Come on out.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like yoga adapts to you. You don't adapt to yoga.
Right.
Right. So the practice is for you, not you fitting yourself into this mold. So that's a great example, because a lot of clients do primarily things
Yes.
that are in the
Yes.
frontal plane
Yes.
tend to be the most obvious
Yes. Well,
obstacles to getting into different types of poses. So if you do carry a little extra weight in your belly, and child's pose is gonna feel different than somebody who's maybe doesn't have that there, and it's not wrong, right? It's not wrong. It's just, what are you experiencing, and are you getting the most out of the position and the posture the way you're doing it, right?
Yeah. So I think of like laying on your belly. So you laying on your belly, and a lot of times Janet uses is you're laying on your belly, one hand on top of the other. Fine. The minute the hands are out in front of you, and now the cue is put your forehead to the ground. I can't put my forehead on the ground because I have stuff in the way. So for me, that's kind of like, okay, where do I put my head now? Because I can't put my forehead on the ground. So now I'm like, do I stick a block? Do I just let it hang? Do I dangle? It's kind of like, sometimes I'm on my nose. I'll tell you honestly, sometimes I'm on my nose. Sometimes I turn my head. I'll go on my chin. So like, though, you just have to kind of figure out, like, okay, I can't get rid of this stuff. So
Right.
How do I figure that out and make it work for me? And because someone who doesn't have a chest, to them laying on the floor on their belly is no big deal, right? So right, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. But it is, and it's even like lifting up. So once you're in that position and you're lifting up the chest, like you can lift up, but I don't look like everybody else because they're looking so beautiful, like really lifted up. I only look like I'm lifting up this much because I got stuff in the way, So it's almost, when you look around the room too, you look and you say, I don't look like her. Well, no, you're not going to look like her because you have stuff,
Yeah, and that, when we say figure it out, which is something we say an awful lot. When we say figure it out, we mean there's props. There's always props around that. Like straps can increase the length of your arms. Blocks can increase the length of your arms by bringing the floor closer to you. The strap can bring your hands closer to you if you're in a bind. So there are definitely ways to make almost every pose accessible with the use of props. Also changing the orientation, right? So we know child's pose can be a very challenging posture for people that have stuff. And it's not always comfortable. But then if you change the orientation, you flip the person over, you do reclined child's pose. Now they're on their backs, and the wall can be an assistance for the feet if you do it up against the wall. So now they're not struggling to keep their knees into their chest, but they have their feet, if you can envision this, their feet are against the wall, they're on their backs, their knees are pulled in. So that's a way for somebody who might feel like they have too much stuff, and it's not comfortable, they're having a difficult time. Sometimes people say, I feel like I'm suffocating. Yes. And of course, that's like the anti-yoga, right, because everything about yoga is moving the breath, letting the breath flow freely. So sometimes changing the orientation, adding props and stuff is a way to make a pose. I mean, I think as an instructor, that is one of my main objectives in life. And as I go through this journey, is always trying to I love the challenge of trying to figure out how to make a pose work for somebody. That's like one of the things I love. It's easy, not easy, but when someone's able to pop into something, then it's, they don't, I don't want to say they don't need you, but they kind of don't need you, right? They're good. But you get somebody who's, struggling and isn't and has these very real, very, very real, valid reasons for maybe not being able to construct themselves in the traditional classic way we present a posture. I love being able to help them achieve what it is that the posture is meant to bring to them, right? So if it's, that's when I can bring it back to physiology. Mm-hmm. That's when we can bring it back to is the posture working internal rotation of the shoulder? Is it working external? What's it working for the legs? What movement, what mobility is it attempting to increase and improve on this person?
Yes.
And then how can I make that happen for them, even in the smallest way?
And even like not only like yoga is for every body, so not even like body shape type, but think about people's age, think about their mobility, right? So somebody wants to try yoga, but they have trouble getting up and down off the floor. Well, that doesn't mean they can't come and try yoga, because we will give them props. We will help them. They don't have to sit on the floor.
Right.
They can sit in a chair. They can sit on one of our feet ups. Mm-hmm. So they can work against the wall, whatever. So not only your physical, like the proportion of your body, but it can also be the capability of your body. If you had an injury, or you are just, your mobility is bad, or whatever it is, it's okay. Like yoga we're here for you.
Right.
Like, we can still help you.
Exactly. Yes. You don't need to be able to hold yourself up in a prayer squat in order to experience the benefits of a prayer squat, right? So prayer squat would be feet wide, 45 degrees, and you're as low as you can to the ground, knees are out wide. You don't need to be able to do that in order to experience the benefits of that, right? So we have tons of people who sit on the edge of the feet up to accomplish Malasana squat, or blocks, or even a chair, right? It's really just fundamentally about getting their legs to their stretching the inner thigh muscles. So it's how can I increase the distance in between their knees? And then, of course, that's firing up the outside of the thighs. And so really it's about how can I get those actions into them? And then eventually, I mean, that's part of the fun of being an instructor, is that 6 months later, they're like, what?
Yes.
I don't need this anymore. I could go lower.
Yes. Or I couldn't lay down without blocks and bolsters and blankets. Laying on the floor was such a struggle. And now 6 months later, you go to hand them their prop, and they're like, I'm good. I don't need it. And you're like,
right. That is, to me, that's the work. Yes. That's the work of being an instructor, and that is the work of what yoga, in my opinion, really is meant to bring to people. It helps them reclaim maybe mobility they've lost, strength they've lost, confidence they've lost. That to me is where the real work is, because again, it's not easy, but it's easier to teach to people that are fluid, and it comes to them a little bit more naturally. But to really get someone to believe that if they continuously and repetitiously show up and they trust that we know how we can move them from one position to the next over a span of time, keep showing up, and then for them to finally have that monumental moment of they showed up afraid. They didn't want to get up and down off of the mat because they were afraid if they got down they couldn't get up, and then 6 months later, that moment of it doesn't bother them to get up and down anymore. It's like that's when we are those are the stories we share, I think, the most with each other is like, oh
Yes.
my God, our client today was able to
To-
hold something
Yes.
for a really long time.
Yes.
And that's what keeps them coming back.
Yeah. And for me, I was that person. So I came from a point of, forward folding. I couldn't forward fold. I couldn't downward dog. It was painful. It was hard work, but I kept showing up. And every time I came, that down dog became a tiny bit easier. That forward fold became a tiny bit easier. And then all of a sudden, it just like, it's a cycle. It clicks. That came easier. So now something else becomes a little easier. And now the confidence starts to boost. You're feeling better. The confidence is better. You don't feel that defeat. You feel like this is working. This is working. And I love one of my greatest joys here at Pearl is working. I love working with the beginners, and I love working with those clients that they were me. They were me. And I get it. I get it. They need help there, but the little monumental things are so awesome.
They really are.
They are.
And to get people to believe again,
Mm-hmm.
getting people to believe again and getting them to move again, that's the most rewarding
It is.
experience, you know.
And when they start, like, people think too, I'm not flexible. I'm too old. Oh, I'm already 60. I can't start yoga. No, this is the time you need to start to move. This is when you need to start to move. Is it going to be harder than when you were 30? Yeah. But it doesn't mean you can't do it.
No, it doesn't. And with time and consistency, once a week, 1 hour per week, scientifically, the studies show that's all it takes for physiological changes to start to appear. I mean, Harvard Medical School has digested this information. And that's what they say. 1 hour a week for 8 weeks is when you really start to see the progress. And you keep going after that, and it does. It really, your practice just starts to
It does.
open up.
And then it just snowballs. Like for me, it snowballed into, I was doing yoga, and then I was looking for a little more. And then you add a little cardio, and then you add a little, it just started to be like, my body felt better. So I felt like I wanted to add a little something else. So it kind of snowballs. People say that it does, it causes that effect, but it really does. It really does.
I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it with
Yes.
other clients.
Yes.
They're walking 5Ks. All of
Yes.
a sudden, now they're walking 5Ks or going into group fitness
Yes.
classes. Whereas, absent the foundation of getting themselves comfortable moving again with yoga,
Mm-hmm.
they might not have had that confidence. So,
Yeah. Yes.
all right. Well, if you have any comments, if you have any suggested topics you would like us to discuss in our upcoming episodes, we would love to hear them. And as always, we are super grateful for anybody that took the time to check in with us. We love hearing your thoughts. So please, especially my mom-in-law, she watches these till the very end. We can always count on Deborah.
We love you, Deborah. Namaste.
But anybody else, give us some